Hello, YouTube fans. Thank you so much for sending me all these notes. And you can be very generous sometimes. And you say, well, this helped me so much. And I'm glad. And actually, that's why I do it, because I know that it helps a lot of people, especially those of you who are in distant places and sometimes you can't find somebody to play with or don't have a private teacher. I'm not a substitute for a teacher, but I think I can help you by just posting those videos and making those, help you practice with them. As far as some of the tips as well. Thank you so much for your comments. I have a comment from Kathy, and she asks, I just picked up the violin after 25 years, and then she's telling me thank you for the videos, and she has a couple of questions. One of them is, what brand of strings do you suggest? And other people have asked me what kind of strings I use. And to be honest with you, I use about 3 or 4 kinds of strings, depending on what violin I'm using and what kind of music I'm playing. So anyway, I'm going to give you a little bit of a 101 on violin strings for those of you who need that information. There are 2 or 3 kinds of strings, main types of strings, 3. The first one is the gut strings, which, they're made out of gut. And they're not very widely used nowadays because they're pretty picky about humidity. They're picky about the temperature changes and all that. So people don't use them as much nowadays. They're the best sounding string to me, the gut strings. But you can get them in any brand almost that you can, but they're expensive. They're usually, around $100 per set. But anyway, those are one kind, not very widely used. Second kind is the synthetic string, which is very widely used nowadays because it tries to imitate the gut sound, but without the guts strings problems like resistance to, they're more resistant to humidity, the synthetic strings are, and it varies so much from brand to brand, the kind of sound they make, but they're usually very warm sound, very easy to play strings generally, but that's why people have favorites, because there's so many kinds. So one of the brands I use, the synthetic strings, which is mostly what I use, is the Pirastro Tonica. Those are, I could say, my favorite. Second favorite is the Tomastic Dominant, and those are very, very popular. They're the most popular string, and most of the time they're very good for small size instruments. For those of you who have half size or quarter size violins, or even smaller, you can use dominant strings because they come in all sizes. So tonicas and dominant, and then there's a couple of others that I use sometimes that I can recommend. The Dario Zayx, it's actually an American-made string. It's very resistant to changes in humidity and also in temperature, especially for those in the South, like me here in Texas. And before I was in even more south, and south of Texas, in Mississippi, the humidity is pretty high. So those strings are super, because sometimes you tune them and you don't even need to tune them again for the rest of the day, sometimes for the rest of the week. They settle out down very well on the violin. So and very quickly too, so they don't change too much. as compared to dominant strings who that are, you know, kind of um, people know that you put them on and then you have to stretch them and stretching through the, you know, about a week or maybe even two until they quit stretching and the tuning is quite settled. Well, Zayek strings, they settle very quickly. Tonica strings settle a little bit more slowly than Zayeks do, but I think better than dominant to my for my experience. So those are the kind of three type of strings I use. Sometimes I use on a string made out of steel, steel core, and that's the third kind of string that I was talking about. First is the gut strings, then the synthetic strings, and there are plenty of those, all the brands. And then there's the steel core string, which has a steel core, all of them. And so those strings especially are good for like students, or if you don't want the violin to change the tuning so much. They're very quick responding string, so when you play on the string with the bow, they respond very quickly. So you can use those, and they barely change. They do change a little bit with temperature, but they're not as fickle as the gut strings or even the synthetic strings, some of them that can change very rapidly. But anyway, so the ones I use is the Dario Prelude, and especially good, they're especially good for electric violins. I have an electric acoustic violin that I use sometimes, and I use those strings, and they're super cheap. They're like $12 a set. I mean, for the 4 strings, you get, you know, you pay $12 for them, and they're super good for electric because they're resistant to light, and some people that who play electric violins, they play in stages with a lot of light and a lot of heat, so they're resistant to that. And also, when you put that string through an electronic system for the violin, they sound pretty good. They don't sound overly bright like some of the synthetic strings might sound with an electric violin. So they sound pretty good to me. If you have an amp and you hook it up to the amp and all that, they sound pretty good. Then sometimes I use other strings to try out. I've tried the crown strings lately. They're Swedish, so, and they're pretty good actually. I'm liking it a little bit on the bright side, but I like them. So there you go, strings, 3 kinds. The gut strings, which I really don't use much. I think I've used them once or twice in my whole entire life. Then you have the synthetic strings, and my favorites are Pilastro Tonica, Tomastic Dominant, and also Dario Zayeks. And then the steel strings, which I use preludes, and sometimes I use some Pilastro Chrome chord as well. But the Dario prelude are pretty cheap. So there you have it. It's a strings 101 for violin. And I have other brands I can tell you, but those are my main strings that I use. And so, Kathy, there it is. Strings I recommend. There you go. If you want to buy strings, it's better to order 1 or 2 sets or something. Order them somewhere from your local store or online at Young Musicians, sharpmusic.com or swstrings.com. you can order those strings there. Anyway, other books supplement to supplement the Suzuki violin books. Talk to your teacher, because there are plenty of them, and actually, they're the same books. They've been used for years and years and years. Books that I used when I went to school. So there you have it. Thank you so much for all you that faithfully subscribe to the channel and that give me the privilege to help you. And keep your comments coming. Sorry, I don't have time sometimes to respond to all of them, but I will try my best from now on. Okay. See ya and keep practicing. Bye.